Hey everybody, welcome to GMG Review. Today we're taking a look at The Doomed, Apocalyptic Horror Hunting, a wargame by Chris McDowell and Osprey Games. This was kindly sent as a complimentary review copy and is a full-color, solo, cooperative, and versus game of basically surviving on a planet where you've been abandoned by the company, everything they've left. And there are 5 dooms basically escalating to the point where the world may end, and you are hunting the horrors across the planet, which take various shapes and forms. It is a rules-lite warband skirmish game that focuses primarily on building and converting cool models, and the idea here is that we are sort of like exacting our imagination onto the tabletop. So it's a skirmish game on a 2x2 to 3x3 table, and it requires plenty of player agreement for the core rules, which are honestly quite simple. It focuses mostly on the themes of the warband and doesn't want the rules and tokens and counters to get in the way of whatever immersive experience you're going to be basically trying to like enact here. It's all in beautiful color and has little silk page markers, which I thought was super cool. This is the first time I've seen these in an Osprey book, to be honest with you. Joe didn't even get these, man, so good for you, Chris. You got some silk page markers in your book, which I think actually add quite a bit, because you can just go to, let's say, for instance, the campaign section if you want, for quick reference, throw one in there, and then into warband creation, and throw one in there, and you've got that nice and tagged and ready to rock and roll. You probably won't need the rules reference as like a thing, like to reference the rules themselves, because they're relatively light. There's not a lot, I think, to remember, like crunchy mechanic-wise, and even like your annotations for your game won't take up a ton of space, which is very cool. So Chapter 1, who are you and what do you need? What is this game? It's a narrative skirmish game. Up to 8 doomed individuals on each side taking on a horror while competing over conflicting objectives. It's got simple rules with no measuring of distances. I wasn't super sure about that until I read what they meant by that, and it's actually very clever. It reminds me a little bit of the old Inquisitor rules where you have to get successes in order to accomplish things. So it's limited in that your opponent basically can put you, if you try and go too far, the lower the quality of your model, your opponent can basically put you along the path you tried to move. So it balances quite nicely, actually. Fast battles can be finished in under an hour and played back to back. Open enough to use a variety of miniatures and scenery. Rules that create drama. You play to win, but play to find out what happens as well. No stacking and tracking. Focus on the miniatures in the battlefield, not lists, tokens, and offboard resources. And it's designed for small tabletops with dense scenery. So far, Chris, you're speaking my language. To sort of like syllabize all that, it is a rules-lite, small table surface game. My favorite kind, to be honest with you, that focuses on creating drama, memorable moments, crackerjacks, and ever afters. So, so far, so good. The battlefield itself, 2 or 3 feet across. It doesn't define, but I'd probably go denser, the better. And then terrain should be dense and span vertical levels. Players should ensure that long open stretches are broken up by waist-high obstacles. And as a guide, lay down obstacles and terrain in a way that splits the battlefield into a 3x3 grid. So you want something in the middle, basically, and you want the rest of the terrain sort of spread around it. Unless otherwise, specified terrains assumed to be climbable by the resourceful combatants who are doomed after all. And the game has a Kitbash attitude. The game is designed to embrace the things that I enjoy most about miniature gaming, pouring your heart into modeling and painting a weird new creation and unleashing it onto a table full of chaos and drama. You play to find out what happens, and you embrace the craft. The tools are here to create and run a campaign, but see them as a source of inspiration rather than a restrictive set of laws. The world of the Doomed exists to serve your game. Its purpose is to inspire you to create unique warbands and make them into a memorable and likely horrible journey. And then last but not least, competitive collaboration. In most miniature games, the other player is clearly your enemy or ally. Here the relationship's a bit fuzzier, but I like to think of it as competitive collaboration. You both owe it to each other to play to win, but equally you're both playing the game to have a good time. The perfect game is one where both players enjoy a tightly fought contest. This extends to the craft, where a combined collection of miniatures and terrain create many more options for warbands, horrors, and scenarios. Think of players taking part in a shared journey rather than an outright race. And that, to me, is, I think, a very good philosophy, so I like how it's communicated. All right, playing the game. There's introduction and terminology. So basically, you take it in turns, performing 3 actions, 1 model at a time. Any combination of actions can be taken. There's 5 generic ones, and then you can have specific actions based upon your type. After performing an action, you're marked as exhausted. Then as this sequence takes up a single turn, and each model's turn gets added together into a round. At the start of a new round, remove all the exhaustion markers. A unit that's not exhausted is considered readied. Rolls use a d6 as compared to your quality, and a player is randomized at the start of each round. So you only have one stat, quality. A high quality unit could be like a 3+ quality. Average to low would be 4 and 5. And then first player is randomized at the start of each round. You can roll or pick a chit from a bag. They don't really care. Unit is a single model representing a single individual Warband member, horror, or other unbound model. So unbound units are basically things like the followers the horrors have, anything that's not controlled by a player. They will act in the common way. They do their 3 actions in turn, followed by an automated set of, following an automated series of priorities. So the 1 is attack the nearest enemy, 2 is move towards the nearest visible enemy, and then 3 is move towards the nearest non-visible enemy. Horrors and minions treat all Warband members as enemies, and other horrors and minions as allies. Other types of unbound specify the way that they are different from this. If a unit does not have any enemies, then the player that activates it can move them at will, but cannot attack or cause direct harm to anyone. Deployment's pretty simple. Generically speaking, everyone starts off table, and during your first action, you place the model on your friendly edge, and then complete your actions. Unless specified by the conflict. The conflict is the mission, basically. There's 2 things, the conflict and the horror you're hunting. They add up to the overall thing you're playing for that game, and they combine in different variations. If it doesn't call for any kind of specific deployment, then that's how you do it. Otherwise, that's all. And then you have opposite board edges to your opponent. Horrors and Nexuses. Horrors should not exist, but have found a way to anchor themselves to our world. Each horror has 3 Nexuses listed in its description. You have to destroy those to kill it. You can down it as normal, and it can take damage, but it won't die, and will start to come back to life if you don't actually destroy the Nexuses that are tethering it to the planet. At the end of each round, the horror rolls a response as detailed in their entry. So it'll basically do like a bonus super action at the end of each round to dictate sort of like how it's feeling right now. And then minions, these creatures follow the horrors and are taken as normally. When the horror is defeated, all the minions scurry away. And then finally ending the round, when all the units are exhausted, the round ends. And some special actions are performed in the following order. If the horror is alive, they do the response, and then perform any other end of round actions detailed in the horror or conflict entries. If it's unclear, then perform them in the order list on the page. And then ending the battle. Normally it ends if you kill the horror. If using a conflict, one player has won the objective, or it's become impossible for either player to win. And if using both a horror and a conflict, both the above are met, must be met before the battle will end. So if you're doing like a special scenario and also there's a horror on the table, you have to defeat both. All right, actions. When it's a unit's turn to act, they can take 3 actions. These are move, fight, shoot, and recover. There's also narrative actions and gear actions, but they're not normal and will be discussed basically under their specific thing. A unit's quality is used to perform most actions, so rolling on a 6-sided dice, you have to equal or beat your quality score. So a leader's quality 3+, you only ever get 1. They're free, but you can buy them more gear. An agent's quality 4+, and an initiate's quality 5+. So again, great for using any model collection. It's basically their training level. How do you envision they are toughness-wise, and sort of like from the point of view of their training level. Now, everything requires a quality roll. A move is an action for a unit to move in a straight line over open ground. Now, they do define types of move, like a run over open ground, a hurdle, a climb, a drop, or a leap. All of these things are, there's no crunchy rule to them, but certain things will have additional, like, what would I say, consequences. Like if you don't complete a leap and you fall, you could take damage. Same with a drop. Whenever you do one, you add so your first one's free, you pass your quality test automatically. Your second and subsequent one each turn requires a quality test. So basically if I say, and you have to use like common sense, if you want to move in a straight line across open ground, right, you can't duck any obstacles. That's why the terrain matters on the table. You also can't change your movement type. So like you can't move, like if you want to move through difficult terrain, you move to side of it. If you want to leap over an obstacle, you need to do that as a separate action. So like, it sounds like, oh, I can just move. I say I move across the table to like another vantage point. That's not how it works. How it works is you nominate a place you could conceivably get to without changing the condition of your movement, and then you get to go there for free as your first action, but the next thing you need to do after that, as you chain these events, you have to roll to do it. So like, if I move my model up to a wall, that ends my first action. Then if I want to climb to the other side of that wall, that's a separate movement. And generally speaking, they're defined as different kinds of moves. So each different kind of move you'd want to do, like picking your way through difficult ground, that would be a separate movement. You'd have to roll the quality. Now, if you fail the test, if you're doing something dangerous like a climb or a jump, you can take damage. If you are moving through difficult ground, your opponent gets to put you at any point along the move's start and end. So you got a big patch of rubble. Your opponent could put you in the rubble, so you have to make that test again, as opposed to having you clear it to the other side. And that's sort of like the penalty, basically. And like dramatically speaking, it'd be like you slip across the rubble and fall, and end your move in the middle of it. So I really like that because it reminds me a bit of like the movement and action point system in Inquisitor, where you had to make a number of tests to see how far along your action you would get during the course of the turn. And it means that your less reliable troops are less reliable and your more reliable troops are more reliable. Your leader can always do it on a 2+, which I think is interesting for movement points. And everybody else might have some kind of narrative thing happen to them. When you fight, you pick your melee weapon. It'll give you, it'll have a stat line like how many attack dice it gets and how many damage points it does. Then you make a quality check. Once you make the quality check, your opponent makes a quality check back for the number of successes you did, and its damage. And each one is a save. If it fails any saves, then it must make a shock test, and the shock test can have a bunch of variety of things happen. But you can only make fight actions in base-to-base contact. Each damage point will, like I said, do extra things. There can be multiple weapons, but you only get to pick one for each attack action that you make with a fight. And then, of course, you've got ranged ones. So if it's range, it will have an R. If it's M, it's going to be melee. It'll also have a number of dice that you roll, and then how many damage points you do. It's pretty much the same, except you have to have a line of sight. You don't have to be in base-to-base. A unit has line of sight and can therefore see another unit if there's an unbroken line from the unit's head to the head, torso, legs of the target. Arms, weapons, and other protrusions are always considered to be ignored for line of sight. If you have partial concealment, then that means you're a -1 to hit for your quality, and that's really it. Now, when you roll on the shock table, a 7 means you're downed, but you might also get additional rules from the shock. So failing your save doesn't mean you're dead automatically. A 7 puts you down. It's a 2d6 roll, right? So it's going to be the most common result. A 6 is you panic and attack the nearest target, friend or foe, so you might accidentally shoot your friend. An 8 is you fight back, make a free attack targeting your attacker. A 9 is you get to make a free move and then go down. A last gasp, perform a free action and then go down. Savior, an ally the unit has line of sight to, makes a free move. Someone runs towards you. And then 12, Vengeance. One ally gets a free attack against your attacker. So all of like the shock results, the damage results, are kind of narrative, which I think is interesting. All of these cause you to go down, but they can even get worse, like where opportunity, the attacker gets a free move or attack. 3, bleeding, roll in the unit's quality or be taken out automatically, and then slaughter, you're just taken out in a terribly messy way. And when you take it out, you have to make a post-game roll. When you're downed, you can recover afterwards. So it recovers an action, make a quality roll. If successful, the unit may stand up and will no longer be downed. If failed, they stay down. If a non-down friendly Warband member is touching the down unit, there's +1 to the quality roll because they help you. A unit that's touching a downed ally or a friendly Warband member can also take a recover action on the down model's behalf. If it's successful, the down model stood up and is no longer down. And you can only do 1 recover action per turn. So it's cool because like it's fairly easy to get injured, but narrative things happen during the injury process, and also there's ways to come back from being injured. So you don't have to track like numbers of wounds or how tough you are or whatever. It's just like, do you shake it off or not? It's a very action movie, which I really like. So then we're into additional rules like judgment calls. Be generous when just adjudicating vertical movement and short moves, but be strict when adjudicating long moves and line of sight. So basically, when you're collaborating with your opponent for your movement, remember, it's a straight line you have to move in, so that kind of keeps you from getting exaggerated distances, because as long as there's lots of terrain on the table, it'll make more sense for each move. And then finally, end of turn, unit may have multiple effects that resolve at the end of the turn, especially from unit mods. If this is the case, the player chooses the orders in which they are resolved. You can have your board divided into quarters, and then additional action types. There's narrative actions. As the narrative of the game unfolds, players may wish to perform tasks not covered in the rules. In these cases, players should come to an agreement. Typically, it involves spending an action and may require a roll for risky or difficult actions. For example, opening a door might require an action. Breaking down a barricade might require a rule to succeed, and bypassing an alarm door might have grave consequences or failures, such as alerting the horror minions. And then finally, gear action. Some pieces allow for special options, often limited to use per battle. Unless otherwise noted, they consume a single action. And then, yeah, just roll off to see if something contradicts something else. All right, so now your warbands, chapter 3. So we know how to play. That's it. Those are the core rules. Like, they are hella simple. So 9 through 16. So you're looking at 7 pages with art of rules for the core rules mechanics. I love that. I think that's great. Because you have a simple 5-action economy, because ranged and melee fighting is simple, your models can be whatever you want them to be. This is not a crunchy game, it's a narrative game, and it focuses on making miniatures. So you have about as broad a base as possible to make your collection look however you want to look. Of course, this is steeped in that hashtag 28 mentality, and the I think it's at the end actually. I think you get some great links for inspiration and reference, especially the Gardens of Hecate website. Yeah, there we go. He's got, where is it? I think there were some links to that in here, but I can't remember. Anyway, there's a bunch of the like 28 sort of like community like influence and thank yous here. And so making warbands. So now we're into the fun part. How do you make your warbands? Well, they've got a bunch of factions. Each one of the factions is kind of to a theme, and those themes give you a bunch of additional stuff. Now the factions are, this is a lot. A big chunk of this book is dedicated to the factions themselves. So we're up to, what's the stands, the dominations campaigns. The next like 38, but next like 20 pages-ish are all factions. You get 20 renown to buy them. You can earn more renown over the course of a campaign, slowly but surely. Your leader's free, so you get 1 model for free. The other 7 you have to pay for from various different like levels. And you can buy them additional gear on top of that. You have to buy them a weapon if possible. And they will have a number of different targets or things like your range, number of attack dice, and the damage they do. You have to buy the gear for your leader, though. So faction lists, the Inheritance Court, these are like your old kind of like knightly remnants of whoever was on the planet that was in charge before. You have 3 different leader choices. You have a sheriff, a marshal, and a judge. And then your followers are paragons, pathfinders, champions, and freelancers. So you're looking at 3 different agent types, and the freelancer is your basic guy. You can also have chroniclers, legionnaires, zealots, and heralds, who are the sort of like specialists. And they'll have like a special skill like precise or fierce. Precise is like reroll a missed attack dice. Tough is reroll a save. Fierce is reroll a melee dice. So relatively simple for like the keywords, and then you just get your quality. So average prices are like 2 to 3 points, and when you buy them gear, they have their own gear list. And that gear is like siege hammers, ancestral blades. So they're like a melee 3 with ×1 damage. But they have rend, so an attack roll of a 6 causes ×2 damage. They do 2 damage instead of 1. Flamethrowers. This would be good for like a, let's say, Imperial Inquisition-y kind of, or like a heretical hunters kind of warband. And then rewards are upgrades you can buy after your first campaign game. So you can buy top for somebody, buy phalanx, which is at the end of the unit's turn. An ally, its touching makes a free attack. You basically get to chain attack with people. Overrun, fanatics. You fight at quality 3+ when the unit can see the warband's leader, because you love the leader. And then leader ambitions are things like a long-term goal that you can pick when you build your warband for the course of the campaign. So things like purge, have your warband kill 3 horrors. And you get additional bonuses when you finish your ambition. The Lost, these are sort of like techno-barbarians. The Reborn Covens, the Warped. So this is, you know, a little more chaotic, I would say. The Exile Bands. So Exile Bands are things like aliens and stuff like that. So cast from the stars. And they've all got their own sort of like tables that they can live off of, and all their own like different weapon mods and different ambitions they have. And there's a sample of warbands, so lots of different like choices here. And honestly, I think the coolest part of this is you're looking at making like a lot out of this sort of starting cookbook. You're getting ideas of where to start off and ideas of where to like go with your collection, with what you're building. And you could fit almost any sort of like post-apocalyptic-y, science fiction-y collection to these miniatures. You could do a Fallout game if you want to out of these. In fact, that's not a terrible idea. And then finally, skills and mods. These are like the generic bonuses that you can add to people. So like I said, fierce is reroll when fighting, precise is reroll when shooting, tough is a reroll when recovering and saving versus melee, and nimble is a reroll when moving and saving versus range attacks. And then mods can be purchased. These are special effects linked to a unit or weapon, a maximum of 1 per weapon. You can buy unit mods, like manipulate at the end of the turn, move an enemy unit it can see, but in such a way that they do not come directly into harm. Guardian, and these can be obviously on your characters based on your different warband list. Weapon mods, Agony, ×2 damage versus down targets, like a taser. Brutal, roll 1d6 plus 1 on the shock table instead of 2d6. Oh, it's a low roll. Brutal's a brutal weapon mod. And so there you go. And then we're into campaigns. And you get some examples. So what's the point of all this? So first there's your campaign casualty roll at the end of the battle for anybody who got taken out of action. And it's a d6. So it's going to be swingy. It's not on a 2d6 roll. So 1's you're dead. 2 critical, roll or die. It's going to make a quality test or die. 3 MIA, your warband must contain this unit in the next battle, but the enemy deploys them anywhere in the board out of sight. So basically they're just lost and you're trying to find them. Injured, your warband must contain this unit in the next battle. If this miniature is taken out in the next battle, they're dead because they're just like hurt at the start of the game. Loss, if this miniature is used in the next battle, they deploy on a random table edge instead of at the start of the second round. And then scarred, they get a gruesome injury to show off. And then renown and rewards. At the end of the game, for each of the things that's true, you get a renown. If you kill or destroy a Nexus for 1, all of them for 2, and the horror is defeated for 3. You can use your renown points to buy, if you kill the horror has its own list of like bonuses you can get. And then the warband that won the conflict can also purchase items from the conflict rewards. So each of the conflicts and horrors have their own like little special things you can buy. I like that it's like, it's a bit, what was that game called? The one where you're hunting robots. Oh shoot. It's a bit like that one where you have like unique rewards based on what you're killing, which I think is cool. And then your ambition, each warband leader begins with 6 ambitions listed in the faction. They can be ticked off at any time in any order and often involve actions over multiple battles. Completing your ambition puts you in a better position to end the campaign, specifically in the climax scenario. And when playing a campaign, a warband gains a point of prestige whenever they do one of the following: taking out a horror or winning the conflict. Unlike Renown, this is judged individually for a warband. When a warband reaches a prestige score of 10, they initiate the campaign climax automatically, and there's special missions called climaxes. If multiple warbands gain 10 prestige at the same time, then we'll have to determine who initiates the climax. And the climax is a special battle to end the campaign, and I love that the campaign has an end. That is so, I think, great from the point of view of like a collecting and modeling hobby, because you basically build up your collection and then it has a climax, then you get the incentive to like rinse and repeat and do it again. I think that's a really cool addition to any game system, and I think that having like a logical conclusion for a campaign is a really cool idea. And then each warband receives additional resources for the climax. They take the scenario's entry for the number of ambitions their leaders fulfilled or a lower number of entries they wish. So basically your ambitions that you've finished. If you initiate the climax, the number of ambitions that you've done lets you pick a different climax from the climax table. And then finally, other worlds. What lies beyond the world presented in this book is up to your imagination, and the interpretation is more valid than any other. There's 5 dooms in the world: hunger, hatred, domination, oblivion, and ruin. And each world event between each battle before wielding your warband, roll a die to determine which doom is in force for the next battle. It's either hunger, hatred, dominion, oblivion, or ruin, whichever the highest is on its track. And then turn the event table of that doom. For each warband, roll a die and add the relevant number. So basically, before you build your warband, you see which doom is in force, which I think is really cool. And then the doom track will give you like different events. So you roll and add the doom like amount to see which one's the one happening. It can be things like traitor, a random follower in your warband is abandoned your cause for a better deal. Your opponent can recruit them in the next battle if they wish to use their current points, which I think is really funny. Hatred, riots, your less disciplined followers are swept up in a riot. Any quality 5+ units you recruit for this battle must pay 1 point each to become fierce. Oblivion, Plague, Contagion rises, infecting your followers and dulling their senses. Any unit that would normally have the precise or nimble skill loses that for this battle, but you gain 1 point back for each skill point that they lost. And then Press Gang, somebody seeks to recruit, to forcefully recruit your followers. Roll for each follower used in the last battle. Those that fail are taken away and cannot be used in the next battle. And then Fortress, a powerful organization, now rules this region from a great fortress. All sorts of people are drawn to believing it's a new sanctuary. For this battle, you can recruit 5+ follower units from any faction. So anybody's units, which I think is really cool. And then Ruin, like Rusting Heap. There isn't much salvage to be found, but it's better than nothing. For this battle, you can buy all gear worth 1 point from any faction list. And that's worth noting is that your leader stays the same, but you can recruit different people for each mission if you want. Because there's no like real going in between mission sort of like carryovers and stuff. I think that's very cool. So when you recruit your new guys, basically, you can add different people. So it means that like picking your faction list isn't final, and you can end up with like a cool kind of narratively built faction of different people. And then it's scenarios. Good reasons to die. Choose your battle. Most battles contain both horrors and conflicts. For a more cooperative battle, just choose a horror. For an outright competitive one, you have to choose a conflict too. So if you want to do competitive ones, you just pick a bad guy to defeat. And if you want to have a conflict, it's what is going on between your two warbands. And then solo scenarios, there'll be rules in each one for that. And so you roll a d6 for your scenario table, and then a d6 for each horror and each conflict. So like if I roll a 2, I roll 2 more d6. I could have a Burning Brute, and the laboratories is the conflict that we're after. So like I'd look at Burning Brute, 65. And that would give me this guy. He's a brute, so he's tough, which means you roll saves, and he's quality 3+. He has a slam. It's 1 die with 5 damage, and a haze, a shooting attack that only hit the shooting attacks only hit the brute on a 6. And heat, when the brute's hit by an attack, deploy an ember next to him, and that's their minions. Heap 3 embers to the side of the board. They're quality 4+. They're ephemeral offshoots of the living conflagration. They'll sear. It's movement times 2. Sorry, melee attacks times 2 damage. If this downs takes out an opponent, destroy the ember. So basically they go out afterwards. And then Nexuses, Gouts of Living Flame, roused by sentiences of the Waking Horror. Start with the Nexus off the board. At the start of the brute's turn, place a Nexus next to them because they drop off of him. They're destroyed upon taking a hit, but shooting attacks only hit them on a 6. And then their effects, at the end of each turn, you can roll a response for them too. Trigger the following effects as each Nexus is destroyed. Deploy an Ember in place of a Nexus. Deploy 2 Embers in place of a Nexus. And they all gain Nimble. And then deploy all off-board Embers in place of the remaining Nexus. So it's really hard to get them because they like proliferate because they're basically little fires. And then finally, roll a d6 at the end of each round that the horror is alive and consult the response table. All Embers make a free action. The Burning Brute makes a free action. All Warband members touching the Brute take a damage. So like, it's horrifying. And then its rewards are Volcanic Shroud. Shooting attacks only hit you on a 6. You can buy it, max 1 for 2 points. An Ember Launcher in place of shooting. Deploy an Unbound Ember at any point you can see. And a Thermal Maul. You can only attack with this weapon once per turn, but it's 3 points and it's a max of 1 in your army. So you get unique like items and unique like war gear and stuff as well. And then your laboratories are on page 120 as the conflict. It means you find a laboratory and you start fighting over it. So imagine you find a laboratory and there's one of these things inside of it, and so you're both racing to complete this. A bounty of chemical and biological knowledge awaits anyone brave enough to enter. Corridors and rooms ruined or intact, scattered with scientific implement. Designate 3 specific rooms as laboratories, and spread them evenly between the 2 board edges. So the objective is, if Warband has only their standing units within a laboratory, they control it. At the end of each round, Warband controls at least 2 laboratories, and they win. So basically, if you kill the horror and then control 2 laboratories, then you'd win that one as well. All shock results affecting a unit inside a laboratory is treated as double due to the hazardous surroundings. And then twist like an overcharge. When attacking within the laboratory, Warband members can choose to overcharge their weapon, replacing either its number of dice or its damage with d6 for this attack only. But if a 1's rolled, the attacker suffers a damage. And then solo, you get side drones inside. They're unbound units that move and treat all Warband members as enemies. And rewards a null water bomb, overcharge pack, or an onslaught bacteria. They're all once per battle abilities. Once per battle in the turn, all units touching you take a damage. a melee damage, saving on a 5+. It's a bacteria. The overcharge pack lets you overcharge your weapon in the same way. And a no water bomb once your battle the target is hit, and they lose access to all their skills and mods, but doesn't affect horrors. Basically, you can turn people's like abilities off with no water. And that's it. So that would be playing through your missions and fighting your horrors. And there's tons of them in here, like the Oozing Bull, a Broken Behemoth, and they all have kind of like a cool Doom Beast sort of effect to them, a Rot Herald, a Gray Circle. It's just a floating gray circle. And there's tons of different conflicts as well, like the laboratories, an Oasis, a Beacon. And when it's all done, a complex, drop sites, there's tons of conflicts. Extractions, demolitions, worshippers. And then there's a climax. So like when you get to the climax table, it's a special battle. It's a complete scenario, so no normal horrors and conflicts used alongside it, and the scenario will specify what's required. So like you still add a conflict and a monster to it. So what you would do is you would have like a coronation, take your rightful place as the king, which I think is great. Conquest, those who complete control do not need a title. And they add additional like victory. If the aggressor's leader is taken out of the defender immediately wins, the defender is wiped out, the aggressor immediately wins. Otherwise, the campaign ends. So basically, like it's an additional campaign, like a trigger for the scenario, but has different events. So like the defender's leader makes a free action. Any defenders in the deployment area make a free recovery. Only the defender in the deployment area makes a free attack. 3 minions enter from a random board edge. Roll for each aggressor that has been taken out. If they pass, they can redeploy next round from any board edge. And number 6 is the aggressor's leader takes a free action. So this one is like the 2 leaders of the warbands come into conflict for the climax. Coronation, similar idea. You're having a ceremony in a chapel. Rebirth, you'll rise to a new existence and lead a new golden age. In this one, you win if the aggressor wins if all 3 horrors are killed and your leader stands atop the tower. So there's 3 horrors in this one, which is crazy. Unbound units, the aggressor chooses 3 different horrors and deploys them anywhere on the board. They do not have nexuses or minions and can be killed normally. You're trying to kill 3 big monsters. Exodus, leaving the world. So the victory in this one, the defender wins if at least half the warband is safely extracted, including the leader, or the aggressor is wiped out, and they win if they kill half the defenders, trying to leave the table. And then finally, you can get a Doom climax. If any of the Dooms reach a 6, then the Doom catches up with you before you like choose your climax, basically. And yeah, and you basically have to run the Doom one instead. So like the Dooms are it's a Doom horror based on whichever one it is. So the Hunger Doom, the Hatred Doom, the Domination Doom, or the Oblivion Doom, and those can also end the campaign. Very cool. Like, and then quick rep for the same stuff that was in there. And about the author, Chris McDowell is a game designer based in Manchester, creator of Into the Odd and Eclectic Bastionlands RPGs. He also writes at bastionland.com and produces regular video and podcast content around the same games. You should go check it out. And then our artist, Helge C. Balzer, was born in northern Germany. As a teenager, made short films. And then painting, conversions, and photography. Anna Polansik, I hope that's right, is a Croatian miniaturist specializing in crafting heavily customized gaming and display pieces in her distinctive macabre style. Very, very cool stuff. So those are the 3 collaborators for this game, The Doomed. So what do I think? I think this is, if you like that John Blanche hashtag 28 style art, that grimy post-apocalyptic sort of like apocalypse punk style, this is and you like converting big miniatures and monsters and Hellraiser beasts and all that stuff, this is probably the perfect game for you. You don't really need anything else outside this. You're not going to have stuff on the table that's going to distract from like your cool art pieces and all of your awesome like terrain and miniatures you made. And the idea of like a collection that has like a loose theme is really well supported by these rules. Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to have already not made a bunch of miniatures that you could like group together into a theme to play with these rules. So I'm definitely be checking it out. I'm gonna find someone cool to collaborate with that wants to like do this narratively, and maybe we'll take turns. Because I don't want to. The one thing you don't want to feel pressured to do is to make the monsters early on. I think what we should probably do is collaborate, roll up who our first like monster hunting expedition is going to be against. either randomly determine or decide what warbands we want to play, and then do like blog the whole thing. Like we do like a week basically where we'd go through collecting and painting and building, because it feels like that's the kind of game this is, where the theme is so important that we should I think capture and record all that too. So I'm excited. I think this is great. I think this is a very cool project, and you won't need anything really outside this book, I think, to get the most out of it, because it's your creativity that you're going to tap for like a long ongoing campaign, and this is going to give you a great sort of like core foundation to build upon that. So good job to everyone involved. It's Chris, Anna, and I'm sorry I forgot the artist's name, Helge. That's I think a great expedition into this kind of theme and mechanic, and I'm glad Osprey's put it together for you. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews. Till then, I'm Ash. Have a great day.